How y'all feel out there?
Oh, yeah. All right.
In 1965, I moved to the Hundreds. My family, all of my family moved to the Hundreds. All of us that had migrated from Dayton, Ohio, by the way of Kentucky. And we moved to the Hoover Hood at first, Manchester Park and all that, for about a year. And then in 1965, 66, we moved to the Hundreds. And we called the hood, which is the 111 Hood now, which was the original Insane Payback Hood. They were the hole in the wall, you know. And
where does the name come from?
The hole in the wall came from that was the hangout. Everybody used to hang out at the Lewis's house. Gary Lewis, Michael Lewis, you know, some of the hogs in the hood, in the hood, you know, Michael Allwine, the Cook family.
And what other gangs did you guys flirt with in the neighborhood?
Well, we called ourselves the Payton Place, you know, the symbol of the Payton Place, you know. We all was young, so we called ourselves the Payton Place. If you know anything about the movie The Payton Place, you know, how they did their thing, you know, that's what we call ourselves, the Payton Place. And that was the older generation, the generation before us. We were just like the baby Payton Places, or the baby, the Hustlers, you know.
All right, so look, when the Crips started on the West Side, explain to me the difference between the original West Side Crips and the baby Crips.
Well, I really can't say baby Crips because we all were active, you know, and that's what Melvin Hardy came in at. Melvin Hardy came from the East Side along with Raymond and them. Melvin Hardy was a fighter, you know, which we all were fighters, but Melvin Hardy had more experience and more heart, and he was a big youngster.
Who were some of the other legendary street gang fighters out your original crew?
Out of the crew of whom?
The Melvins, the Mike Concessions,
you got Melvin, Big Odie. You have Warlock, Lil Spy, whom was Odie's little brother. You had the Moody family. You had Ronald Burnett. You had his crazy brother that fought police, Johnny Burnett.
Buddha fall in that category?
Buddha came when we turned original Crips, because Buddha came from where I came from, and you know, on Hoover in the Manchester district. You know, we both migrated to the West Side. We both went to Century Park. So Buddha came later. Same time, him and Monkey Man came later. You know, him and Monkey Man was the Batman and Robin, you know, then at first, before Tookie. And
tell me about Melvin Hardy's house, being a hangout. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, Melvin Hardy's house was our hangout. Miss Hardy was our mama. She loved us, you know. I mean, you know, we stayed over there, you know, we ate, we slept. She used to pick us up, you know, from the skate rings and do all that. She was a beautiful person. I love her with all my heart. In 1966, we had moved, my family, a part of my family had moved to Century and Wilton. The Padres were staying on in Century Apartments between Wilton and Van Ness. And I got into it with the Sportsman Park boys, and at Sportsman Park, you know, being a new guy in the school, a new face in the school, you know, and over a female, and at the time she was going with one of the Baby Park boys, whom I never confronted me, you know, but the bigger ones, they did. The Melvin candidates and, you know, and all those, you know, the reputable gang fighters, you know, of the Park Boys. Young as we were going to Century Park, Manhattan Junior High. And so after that fight, I didn't go back to Manhattan. I began hanging around with Larry Padrill, Ronnie Padrill, and Beatty Padrill, Rochelle Padrill, and Cat. You know, they was not Sportsman Park boys, you know what I'm saying, but they was out of Compton, but they held their own, you know, and they were fighters, you know.
So where did the Padrills come from?
They came from Compton.
What year did they move into the hundreds?
They moved into the hundreds in, at first they moved into the hundreds in '66, because I was 10 years old. And I moved, and then that's when we started going on our route, you know, to moving all over, you know, from the hundreds all the way to the 20s, where I got familiar with the street gangs, you know, all the street gangs, and I got familiar with all of them before moving back. So once I moved back, the Padres had stayed on 111th in LaSalle. And
now when the West Side formed, and you guys came together with Raymond Washington's East Side, who was your leader?
at that time, we chose at the meeting right after the Raymond Washington had came up to the Rio show and asked, you know, who were the Smacks, and we all stood up. You know, that's when I met Raymond Washington at that particular time. You know, and so we all stood up. Larry Padrill, Louis Conception, and all of us, we gathered around him, you know, and like it was going to, it was finna take off, you know. And before that happened, we was all out in the lobby of the show, and Conrad Williams said, "That's Raymond Washington. I know Raymond Washington." You know what I'm saying? We went toe to toe, you know. So that kind of enlightened what was going on, because I never met Raymond, never heard of him, anything. You know, straight West Side.
All right. So who was your leader, Tookie?
Tookie was never a leader of mine. Tookie was a leader of St. Andrews Park, but not really a leader of that, because Donald Archie had brought Tookie in, you know. But he was a great influence, because him and Sweetback, Donald Archie was so tight, and they left Horace Mann and got kicked out of Horace Mann, and they always been tight.
I'm trying to find out who was your leader.
At the time, my leader always been the Padrills.
Okay, so which one? Any in particular?
Larry Padrill was the leader, you know, the toughest, reputable street fighter, you know, even in the Sportsman Park hood where we lived at.
So he lived in the hundreds before Melvin Hardy moved over.
Yeah, Melvin Hardy didn't move into the hundreds until say around 70, say around 60, 68, 69, 68.
So Larry Padrill was Melvin Hardy's elder?
Yes, he was his elder. And
now, how does Melvin Hardy become the West Side Crip leader?
Well, when we turfed off with the Crip modification and turf off in 1972, 1973, Melvin started the Block Crips. The Block Crips was the Smacks' original turf. You know, Mama Hardy, you know, she was the first, the first mama, the hood mama.
And that was on 113th and Dinker?
113th and Dinker.
Okay. Now, what happened to Larry Padrill?
Well, Larry Padrill was still there, but like I say, he was the elder. You know, we was 14, 15. You know, Melvin Hardy was maybe 2 years younger than him, but Larry Padrill's reputation had gone from 66 all the way up to the moment that we started the Smacks, and we joined the Crip conglomeration with Raymond Washington.
What year did Larry Padre get killed?
Larry Padre got killed later on. Larry Padre got killed in just recently.
Oh, so it was Beatty Padre.
Beatty Padre was one of the first, along with Buddha, was killed.
All right, so go back to your story. You got Melvin Hardy start block on 113th, and what's Larry Padre doing?
Okay, at the time that Larry Padre had been stabbed at the Rio show, we got into it with the Denver Lanes and the Athens Park boys, and they came back. And when they came back, Larry Padre, JJ, Melvin Hardy, and all them was all out in the lobby. You know, we were still watching the movie. So by the time we got out and found out what happened, they'd already stabbed 2 inches from Larry Padre's heart. They stabbed him. JJ, he got the second worst of it, and Melvin Hardy, which was smooth. Well, all of them were smooth fighters, you know, but he got the less of it.
So how does Tookie end up in the hundreds?
Well, Tookie came from the hundreds when Bub,
How come the hundreds to the hundreds?
when he got to the hundreds, Bub and AC, Erskine Jones, Steve Cannon, you know, Michael Harrison, which is my dog, the one that killed Buddha. I met him in the 60s. We went to Hyde Park together, and I met him in the 60s. In 69, he moved out, and then when I moved from the 60s and moved back to the hundreds, we joined up together, and he was the original Smack with us, me, him, Mike Conception.
Let me ask you, when you first became aware of the Pyrus in Compton?
Well, I became aware of the Pyrus and Comptons when we all used to come to the Rosecrans skating ring on Rosecrans between Van Ness and Western. And that's when I met Putin, Tam, and all the rest of them.
And was they Crips or allies with the Crips?
Well, they had an alliance. You know, some want to say they had an alliance with the Compton Crips. You know, and some say, like Baba Louie said, they were Crips. You know, because Baba Louie moved from the east side. You know, and they were Crips. You know, but when I got into it with Putin, and the word was, you know, Compton against West Side. You know, the next night they rode on Rosecrans skating ring, and simultaneously Raymond Washington, he rode right behind them. You know.
Was there any type of alliance with the Brims and Pyrus that early in the game?
I don't believe that per se no, I don't believe per se.
Coming out the hundreds on the west side of LA, who was the major threat? Was it the Pyrus? Was it the Brims? Denver Lanes? Who was y'all basically fighting with in the hundreds?
Well, the Denver Lanes, the Athens Park boys, because they were the closest, because we shared Henry Clay Junior High with them.
How about when Inglewood family came out?
The Inglewood family came. When the Inglewood family came, the war between us and the Chain Gang, you know, had basically been changed over to the family, you know. And when we joined with the conflict between Michael Christian and the Inglewood Cribs, you know, through Lonnie Keelan, who claimed that he was a cousin of Raymond Washington and moved to Inglewood and went to Monroe, that's when they started the Inglewood Cribs, CRIBS. And some kind of way, there's a rumor that Mike Conception was going to England. Mike Conception was a ladies' man. He would hunt down. So he would not, I wouldn't say hunt down, but he was a ladies' man. And while he was in Inglewood, he met the Inglewood Crips, and they told him, we want to join. Let's join together. So when he told them that, he said, well, won't y'all come up to Henry Clay Monday, and let's get this thing together, But Mike Conception didn't tell us. So every day at 2:45, when the bell rang at Henry Clay, we would mob as smacks. We had two sets of smacks. The Henry Clay smacks and Melvin Harley, Larry Padre and all him was Washington smacks, And so somebody came down, ran down from Imperial while we were strolling, doing our everyday thing, putting people on, and came down and told us the Cribs, they're up on Imperial looking for Mike Conception, So we took the opportunity to rush, because Mike Conception never told us nothing about that. So we thinking that they looking for Mike Conception, to do something to him. So once we got to the top of the hill, it may be about 15 and 20 of them, and us, it was maybe about half of the fighters in school was with us, So by the time we arrived to Imperial, it was on. It was a big street gang fight, and they couldn't hold on because there was too many of us.